The night of betrayal. On our third wedding anniversary, I cut an international conference call short to rush home. When I pushed open the bedroom door, my wife was kissing my arch-rival in the bathroom. A workaholic like him is just asking to be cheated on. Her sneer cut through the sound of the running water. I silently backed into the living room and turned on my phone's voice recorder. 3 months later, Vance Technology's stock price imploded, and Marcus Vance was jailed for corporate fraud. My wife knelt in a torrential downpour, crying and begging for my forgiveness. I held an umbrella over her and leaned in. Do you know why the files you stole were worthless? Because from the night you climbed into his bed, every report you saw was a lie. My new assistant handed me the acquisition agreement. Mr. Shaw, she said, Vance is officially bankrupt. Her eyes were shining, so much like the woman I once loved. The light from the crystal chandelier was expensive and cold, refracting off the meticulously polished wine glasses in a cascade of illusory bright spots. At the center of the long dining table sat a bouquet of lush, crimson roses I'd order myself. Their rich fragrance now filled the air, tinged with a cloying sweetness that was somehow suffocating. On the wall, the antique European clock's second hand ticked on tirelessly, a faint sound almost drowned out by the beating of my own heart. Tick-tock-tick. Every second seemed to patiently measure the ache of anticipation. Today was my third wedding anniversary with Vivian. The moment the last long, grueling international video conference ended, I didn't even wait for my assistant's perfunctory. Mr. Shaw, are there any further instructions? I just killed the connection. The screen went black instantly, reflecting my own face, unable to hide the exhaustion and the desperate need to be home. My expensive, Italian bespoke suit was slung carelessly over my arm as I practically sprinted onto the private jet. The roar of the engines thrummed against my eardrums in the sealed cabin. Outside the window was a deep twilight and a roiling sea of clouds. I kept rubbing the platinum wedding band on my ring finger. The cold metal warmed to my touch, and a laser-etched inscription on the inner circle, a vow only we knew, through it all, seemed to burn with a searing heat. By the time Frank, my driver, brought the car to a smooth stop in front of the estate, night had completely fallen. I opened the door and a cool night breeze, laced with the fresh scent of the garden's greenery, washed over me, instantly clearing the lingering stuffiness of the jet cabin. The house was ablaze with light but strangely quiet, with only the faint sounds of the housekeeper preparing dinner drifting from the kitchen. The candlelight dinner was already set up in the living room, flames flickering over the empty seats. "Where's Vivian?" I asked, handing my jacket to the butler who came to greet me, my eyes scanning the empty room. The butler kept his eyes downcast, replying respectfully. "Mrs. Shaw said. She said she was a little tired and went up to the bedroom to rest. She asked that you wait for her when you arrive." There was an imperceptible hesitation in his voice. His eyes darted towards the second-floor bedroom before quickly falling again. The warmth that had been building in my chest at the thought of coming home suddenly stalled. Tired? On a night this important, a night that belonged to us? A sliver of unease, sharp and cold as an icicle, quietly pierced through my eager anticipation. I nodded, not asking any more questions, and started up the stairs. The thick wool carpet absorbed my footsteps, soft and yielding like walking on clouds. At the end of the second-floor hallway, the walnut door to the master bedroom, carved with intricate floral patterns, was slightly ajar, a sliver of dim, ambiguous light spilling from within. The bathroom terror. The instant my fingertips touched the cool metal of the doorknob, a sound, wrapped in the rush of running water, a suppressed yet wanton laugh, drilled its way into my ears without warning. Him? Ethan Shaw, a workaholic who only thinks in code and spreadsheets? He's practically begging to be cheated on. All he ever cares about is his company, his projects. He's cold. What's the difference between him and a block of stone? It was Vivian's voice. The same voice that had whispered countless sweet nothings in my ear was now a poison-laced icicle. Carried by the shower's roar, it sliced through the crack in the door, stabbed into my eardrums, and drove straight into the deepest part of my heart. Every word dripped with naked mockery and bone-deep contempt. My blood seemed to freeze for a second, only to rush back to my head in a raging torrent the next. My fingers dug into the doorframe, the hardwood biting painfully into my knuckles. My breath caught in my throat. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a 1,000-pound stone, every attempt to breathe sending waves of tearing pain through me. Inside, the water was still running, mixed with the sickening, sticky sound of kissing and a man's muffled, low laugh. That laugh, it was painfully familiar. It was Marcus Vance. the CEO of Vance Technologies, the man who fought me at every turn in the market with his underhanded tactics. My greatest rival. The world seemed to hit a mute button. All color drained away, leaving only the suffocating, dim yellow light spilling from the crack in the door. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dull, hollow echo in the cavern of my chest. A cold, metallic numbness spread from my fingertips through my entire body. There was no explosion of rage, no loss of control. A near-cruel calm, like Arctic ice, instantly encased all the searing pain. I could even feel the muscles in my face stiffen, as if I'd donned a cold, hard mask. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. I took one step back, slowly, carefully, and pushed the door back to its nearly closed position without making a sound. I turned. I walked. Every step was heavy, as if I were treading on a frozen lake covered in thorns, yet perfectly steady, without a single tremor. The recording. Back in the empty, silent living room. The butler had tactfully disappeared. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows was the deep night and the cold, indifferent neon glow of the distant city. On the dining table, the red roses were still in passionate bloom, the candlelight dancing, illuminating the empty chair opposite mine like a giant, ironic joke. I sat down on the cold leather armchair. The expensive Italian calfskin was soft to the touch, but couldn't absorb an ounce of the chill radiating from my body. My fingertips were ice-cold, trembling slightly, uncontrollably. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to force down the blunt pain that threatened to tear my chest apart. The scent of roses in the air was now overpowering, acrid. Then I took out my phone. The screen lit up in the dim light. Unlock. Find a voice recorder app icon. My finger hovered for a fraction of a second. Then, without hesitation, I pressed it. A tiny, blinking red dot appeared on the screen, like a single coagulated drop of blood. The faint, sickening sounds of water and flirtatious laughter from upstairs were faithfully captured by the phone's microphone, transformed into the dancing audio waves on the screen. I watched them, my gaze as still and placid as a frozen lake. Time passed, minute by minute, each second stretching into an eternity. The recording timer ticked upward on the screen, coldly documenting every frame of this betrayal. I don't know how long it was. Maybe just a few minutes, maybe a lifetime. The sound of running water from upstairs finally stopped. Then came the rustling of footsteps and Marcus Vance's voice, deliberately lowered but still clear, laced with smug satisfaction. Don't worry, baby. This time, with the data for Project Star Shield, he's finished. When his precious company goes under tomorrow, we'll see how he can keep up that act in front of you. From now on, you're with me. Project Star Shield, the core security project I had poured countless hours into, set to launch at dawn tomorrow. So that was it. A complete, meticulously planned betrayal. The blood in my veins felt like it had turned to ice. Every beat of my heart was the scraping of sharp icicles. The wedding band was still tied on my finger. The vow, through it all, was now a red-hot brand, searing my very soul. Footsteps approached the bedroom door. Someone was about to come out. I stabbed the stop button on the recorder. The red dot vanished. Almost simultaneously, I stood up, my movements swift and fluid, and walked toward the front door of the house. As my fingers closed around the cold brass handle, the bedroom door upstairs clicked open. I didn't look back. The break in the storm. I pulled the main door open. The damp, cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain. The frigid air stabbed into my lungs, bringing with it a self-punishing clarity. Ethan? You. When did you get back? Vivian's voice came from behind me, laced with a sudden panic and a poorly faked surprise and weakness. Her footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. She didn't follow me down immediately. I paused, standing in the threshold between the light of the entryway and the darkness outside. My back was to her. My voice was as calm as still water, betraying no emotion, only a bone-deep weariness and cold. Just got back. I just remembered there's an emergency meeting at the office. Every word felt like it had been pulled from a freezer. Oh, this late? Her voice was full of probing suspicion and guilt. Yes, it's important. I gave her no chance to question me further. No chance to even see the look on my face. I pulled the door open and stepped out without hesitation into the deep night and the damp, cold air. Icy raindrops, carried by the wind, instantly soaked the hair on my forehead and the shoulders of my expensive suit. The warm lights of the house, the meticulously set dinner table, and the place I had once called home were all sealed away as the heavy door clicked shut behind me. The engine started, headlights cutting through the rain-soaked darkness. In the rearview mirror, the brightly lit mansion grew smaller and smaller, finally vanishing around a corner in the rainy night, like a colorful soap bubble that had been ruthlessly popped. My phone lay silently on the passenger seat, its screen dark, but sealed within it was the evidence that could destroy everything. The steering wheel was cold and hard in my death grip, my knuckles white from the pressure. The wipers swept monotonously across the windshield, clearing a world that was simultaneously sharp and blurred. The tearing pain in my chest, catalyzed by a cold rage, was slowly settling, hardening, and finally solidifying into a resolve that was unbreakable, a fire that could burn everything to the ground. Marcus Vance, Vivian Shaw, you didn't just destroy my marriage. The prelude to reckoning. You ignited the last embers of my mercy. And now, it's time for a reckoning. Mr. Shaw, here's the latest summary of capital flows. Vance Technologies is on the verge of collapse. Claire Jensen's voice, calm and well-trained, echoed in the large, quiet office. She placed a thin, neatly printed report on my mahogany desk, her fingertips brushing the edge of the paper with crisp efficiency. I grunted in acknowledgement, my gaze shifting from the three massive monitors arrayed before me. The screens were a blur of flickering real-time stock charts, complex fund flow diagrams, and carefully doctored core data reports for Project Star Shield, designed to lure the enemy in deep. One window was silently playing security footage, Vance Technologies headquarters, lights blazing, with the faint silhouettes of people rushing about inside, a portrait of panic before the fall. I picked up the report, my eyes quickly scanning the precise figures. The last 3 months had been like operating a sophisticated and ruthless machine at high speed. On the surface, the smokescreen that Project Star Shield had been indefinitely shelved due to leaked core data and technical bottlenecks was convincing enough. It had drawn jeers from the industry and successfully convinced Vance Technologies and its associated capital that the intelligence they'd stolen was priceless, leading them to frantically double down on their investment. Underneath it all, through dozens of offshore accounts and complex derivative operations, a massive river of capital had, like a cold viper, silently coiled itself around Marcus Vance's ship, a vessel that looked glamorous on the surface but was, in reality, riddled with holes. Any new moves from Vance? My voice was devoid of emotion as my eyes returned to the screen showing the green line of Vance Technologies' stock price in a catastrophic freefall. He called an emergency closed-door meeting this afternoon, Claire said, her tone steady, her eyes sharp. He tried to win over a few wavering board members and mortgaged the last of his personal real estate and stock to try and pry another bridge loan from Goldman Sachs. The interest rates are said to be astronomical. Also, she paused, lowering her voice a fraction. Ms. Shaw, she went to Vance Technologies this afternoon. She was there for about an hour. Vivian? My fingertip tapped lightly on the cold mouse. For the past 3 months, she had been like a frightened rabbit, hopping futilely across the ruins of our shattered trust. At first, it was cautious, probing phone calls, a tearful, "Ethan, have you been busy lately?" Then came the carefully orchestrated chance encounters at restaurants I frequented, her eyes filled with feigned vulnerability and unspoken grievances. I dealt with it all with cold professionalism, offering a polite nod as if to a trivial business acquaintance. All my emotions had been frozen solid on that rainy night, leaving only a programmed detachment. Her performances shattered against my wall of indifference, time and again, until the panic in her eyes could no longer be concealed. Understood. My voice was flat, as if I'd just heard an irrelevant name. Keep watching them. Get word to our man at Goldman. Whatever money Vance wants, give it to him. Let him jump a little higher. Right away, Claire nodded, without a single wasted word. I had promoted her myself. She was smart, efficient, loyal, a sharp blade kept in its sheath. In her clear eyes, there was only the absolute execution of orders and a quiet understanding of the storm that was about to break. The fall. The office door closed softly, shutting out the faint sound of keyboards from the open-plan workspace outside. The vast room was silent except for the low hum of the server racks. I leaned back in my large executive chair, my gaze falling to my ring finger. The platinum wedding band reflected the overhead lights with a hard, cold glint. 3 months. It was still stubbornly there like a scar that wouldn't heal, or more accurately, a silent warning. My fingers slowly traced the cold inscription on the inside. Through it all, a once searing vow that had been etched into my soul was now nothing but a bitter irony. Every touch was a reminder. The price of mercy is to have your bones trampled by the one you trusted. Once the machine of vengeance has started, it does not stop. Marcus Vance and Vivian Shaw, are you ready? Outside, the city lights were coming on, neon signs flickering, outlining a skyline that was cold and magnificent. But beneath this splendor, an undercurrent was raging. A meticulously planned destruction was entering its final countdown. Mr. Shaw, Mr. Shaw, it's bad. It's a disaster. Mark Lewis, the VP of Securities at Vance Technologies, practically slammed my office door open. His face was ashen, his forehead beaded with sweat. His tie was crooked, and he looked like he'd been dragged out of a river, his spine completely gone. His voice trembled uncontrollably. He was clutching a tablet, its screen glaringly bright. The office was unnaturally quiet, save for the constant, low hum of the server racks, like the breathing of a sleeping beast. I had been standing at the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the sprawling, indifferent city below. The sky outside was grim, lead gray clouds hanging low, brewing a storm. Hearing Mark's panic cries, I turned around slowly. My movements were unhurried, my face devoid of any surprise. "What is it?" My voice was calm as the Dead Sea before a hurricane. Mark stumbled towards me, his fingers shaking so badly he could barely hold the tablet. It's a crash. Our stock. It blew past the circuit breaker at the opening bell. Now it's still tanking. It's already lost 60% of its value." He shoved the tablet in my face. On the screen, the line representing Vance Technologies stock was plummeting at a nauseating, near-vertical angle. The garish green numbers flickered wildly, setting a new record of shame every second. Panic was spreading like a plague in the comment sections, a torrent of curses and wails scrolling by. Past the circuit breaker? I raised an eyebrow, my tone laced with just the right amount of shock, as if I'd just heard the news. How could that happen? At yesterday's close, it was still. "Mr. Shaw, that's not all." Mark was on the verge of tears, his voice a desperate sob. The SEC is here. They're downstairs. And the FBI, with a warrant. They're saying we're suspected of massive financial fraud and stock manipulation. They're going to seize our records and take Mr. Vance in for questioning. He was incoherent, so terrified he looked like he was about to collapse. The raid. Just then, the office door was pushed open again, urgently. This time, it was two stern-faced officials in dark suits from the SEC, accompanied by two FBI agents, equally formal, their eyes sharp and penetrating. An invisible pressure instantly filled the room. Mark Lewis was ghost white, trembling like a leaf. Ethan Shaw, the lead SEC official, flashed his credentials, his voice cold and hard. "We're with the SEC Division of Enforcement and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. This is a search warrant and a summons to assist in our investigation." He placed two documents, stamped with bright red seals, on my desk. "Vance Technologies is under investigation for systematic financial fraud and securities market manipulation, involving a substantial amount of money. We need your cooperation. Where is Mr. Marcus Vance?" The air in the office seemed to solidify. Mark Lewis was ghost white, trembling like a leaf. "Mr. Vance?" I frowned slightly, as if deep in thought. "I don't believe he's coming to the office today. As for his exact whereabouts, I'm not sure." My gaze shifted to one of the agents. "As a current shareholder and board member, I will cooperate fully with the investigation." My tone was steady, calm, possessing an almost detached air. Mr. Shaw, you have to do something." Mark scrambled forward like he was grabbing his last lifeline, seizing my arm, tears and snot streaming down his face. "Mr. Vance, he can't. Something can't happen to him. The company can't go under. The collapse." I gently brushed his hand away. The gesture was light, but held an undeniable coldness. My gaze went past his desperate face, out the window to the sky, which was growing darker by the minute. When a skyscraper is falling, a single pillar can't hold it up. My voice was quiet, but it echoed clearly in the dead silent office, each word landing like a frozen pellet. The fact that Vance has come to this point isn't without reason. What's coming will come. Just then, my personal phone vibrated in my pocket. A new encrypted message from Claire appeared on the screen. Just 3 short words and an exclamation point. "The net is closed." Outside, the long brewing storm finally broke. Fat raindrops hammered against the tempered glass of the curtain wall, a dense, furious drumming that seemed to sound the death knell for this long-overdue collapse. The rain instantly blurred the city's skyline outside, obscuring the figures of the reporters who had swarmed below, held back by police lines, their cameras flashing wildly. Vance Technologies, the ivory tower built on a foundation of lies and greed, had finally met its inevitable end in the heart of the storm. The return in the rain. The rain wasn't falling. It was being unleashed, a furious deluge, as if the sky had burst open. Heavy drops pounded on the roof of the black Rolls-Royce, a dull, dense rhythm. Outside the window, the world was consumed by a gray-white curtain of rain. The streets, the trees, the distant neon lights, all of it was twisted and blurred. The wipers were on their highest setting, frantically swiping back and forth, but could only manage to tear open a few meters of visibility through the watery veil. Mr. Shaw, the rain is really coming down. The road ahead is bad. Should we find a place to wait it out? Frank's voice, cautious and concerned, came through the rearview mirror. No, take me home, I said, leaning back against the soft leather, my eyes closed. My voice carried a weariness I couldn't hide. My body was relaxed, but my mind was like a bowstring that had been stretched taut and then suddenly released, still trembling with the aftershock. 3 months of painstaking effort, of moving every piece with precision, had finally come to a conclusion today. Marcus Vance's ashen, defeated face as the FBI led him away. The catastrophic green line of the Vance Technologies stock ticker. The swarming media vultures tearing at the last shreds of dignity. The scenes replayed silently in my mind. There was no thrill of victory, no elation of revenge. Just a vast, all-consuming exhaustion and the cold, empty void of finality. The car moved slowly into the private community, the rain showing no sign of letting up. The tires rolled through the flooded streets, kicking up muddy water. The familiar silhouette of the estate emerged from the rain, isolated and lonely, like an abandoned fortress. The plea. Just as the car was about to turn into the driveway, the headlights cut through the downpour, illuminating a solitary figure in front of the main gate. A woman. She had no umbrella, just kneeling there, ramrod straight, on the cold, rain-soaked cobblestones. Her expensive dress was drenched, clinging to her body, outlining a pathetic figure. Her meticulously styled hair was ruined, plastered in wet strands to her bloodless, pale face. Rain streamed down her forehead, her cheeks, her chin, mixing with tears to form a small puddle at her feet. She looked like a statue forgotten in a storm, a sinner broken so completely that all she could do was beg in the most humiliating way possible. It was Vivian. The car stopped a few yards away from her. Frank looked back at me, hesitant. Mr. Shaw. Wait for me. My voice was still calm, betraying no emotion. I pushed the car door open and unfolded the long-handled black umbrella I always kept beside me. The cold, wind-driven rain hit me immediately, the umbrella-y fabric crackling under the assault. I walked towards her, step by step. My dress, shoes made soft splashing sounds on the wet cobblestones. The rain was so heavy that even with the umbrella, cold drops still spattered my pant legs and sleeves. She must have heard my approach because she jerked her head up. Her eyes, once so brilliant and full of affection, were now swollen and red, filled with nothing but boundless fear, desperation, and the kind of pleading you see from a drowning person spotting a piece of driftwood. The rain washing over her face made her look wretched and pitiable. Ethan. Her voice was hoarse and broken, torn apart by the roar of the rain. Ethan, help me. Please, help me. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. It was all Marcus, that bastard. He forced me. He lied to me. He threatened me. Ethan, for the sake of our 3 years. Help me. I can't go to jail. I'll die. I swear I'll die in there. The truth. She cried out incoherently, her body trembling violently from cold and fear. She tried to crawl towards me on her knees, the cold water and rough stones scraping her skin, but she didn't seem to notice. She just stared at me with those bloodshot eyes, as if I were her only salvation. I stood before her, holding the umbrella, a few feet away. Rainwater streamed down the ribs of the umbrella, splashing at my feet. I looked down at her, at this woman who was once my wife, who had once vowed to stand by me through it all, now groveling like a stray dog in the mud, wailing for mercy. The drenched dress she was wearing was a birthday gift I had given her last year. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, not even disgust. Just a desolate, frozen tundra. Her tears, her pleas, her excuses. It was all happening in another world, separated from me by a thick, impenetrable wall of ice. She was still crying out, her voice shrill. Ethan, say something. Forgive me just this once. Just once. I'll never do it again. Can we start over? Please? We can leave this place. Go somewhere no one knows us. I'll do anything you say. Ethan, I'm begging you. The unspoken end. Her voice was drowned out by a fiercer gust of wind and rain. I leaned down slightly. The shadow of the umbrella fell over her, shielding her face from some of the downpour. My gaze fell calmly on her eyes, now filled with despair. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the violent roar of the storm like a cold scalpel, precisely dissecting her last sliver of hope. Do you know why that core Star Shield file you stole from Marcus Vance's safe was completely worthless? Her wailing stopped dead, as if an invisible hand had clamped around her throat, all her pleas caught in her windpipe. Her eyes widened, pupils constricting in utter shock and the dawning horror of realization. Her body froze, even the trembling forgotten. The rain washed over her instantly bloodless face, which was now as white as a crumpled piece of paper. Time seemed to freeze. There was only the sound of the relentless rain, an eternal lament, enveloping the two of them, the former husband and wife. Under the umbrella, I watched the faint light in her eyes extinguish completely, leaving behind nothing but the boundless, dead-ash horror of being utterly exposed. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't form another sound. The light of the garage. The answer was obvious. I straightened up and took one last look at the woman kneeling in the mud. Her world had collapsed, and all of it had been sealed from the moment she chose betrayal. Without another pause, I turned and walked, umbrella in hand, step by step towards the warm, bright light of the garage entrance. Behind me, there was only the merciless scouring of the storm and the broken, tuneless whimpers of a woman consumed by despair. Cold raindrops dripped from the edge of my umbrella, hitting the equally cold ground. Every step felt like walking on the ruins of my past. Heavy, but with a strange lightness of a burden finally cast off. Stepping into the garage, the dry, warm air instantly enveloped me. The heavy automatic door slowly lowered behind me, completely shutting out the world of torrential rain and desperate cries. Her heart-wrenching sobs, along with the cold rain, were sealed outside. "Mr. Shaw," a clear, familiar voice spoke up, its tone perfectly steady, with a hint of concern that was almost imperceptible. I looked up. Claire Jensen was standing in the doorway that led from the garage into the house. She had changed out of her crisp business suit from earlier and was now wearing a soft, simple, cream-colored cashmere sweater. In her hands, she held a file and a clear, waterproof document protector. The warm yellow light of the garage overhead fell on her, outlining her silhouette. Her cheeks were faintly flushed from the temperature difference, and a few strands of hair, dampened by the humid air from outside, clung softly to her smooth forehead. Her eyes, always so clear and focused, were looking at me now, as clean and bright as a sky washed clear by rain, carrying a warm and resolute strength. A new dawn. "Claire." I was surprised. I stopped, leaning the still-dripping umbrella against the wall. "What are you doing here? The weather is terrible." I was worried I'd get held up on the road. "The final confirmation documents for the Vance bankruptcy liquidation need your signature tonight, so they can be formally submitted to the court and the creditors' committee first thing in the morning." Her words were clear and professional, her movements efficient as she handed the file to me, without a trace of unnecessary emotion. "I just finished with the last details and thought it would be safer to bring it over myself. I just got here and saw your car pulling in." Her eyes flickered over the rain-dampened patch on my shoulder before returning to my face, a silent question in them. I took the file, which was still warm from her hand. Inside the transparent sleeve, the contract that signified the complete annihilation of the Vance Empire was clearly visible. The black title, the red seal, the cold clauses. Every word was a crystallization of the past 3 months of sleepless plotting and ruthless execution. It felt heavy. "Thank you." My voice was still a little hoarse, carrying the damp chill of the rainy night and a fatigue that wouldn't leave. The garage was silent, except for the muffled, distant sound of the rain drumming against the closed door. Claire shook her head slightly, the corners of her lips turning up in a small, but genuine, smile. "Of course, Mr. Shaw. The most critical steps are done. I'll handle all the procedural matters from here on out to make sure everything goes off without a hitch." Her tone was filled with the certainty of someone who has just completed a monumental task and a hint of relieved satisfaction. She didn't ask what had happened outside. She showed no curiosity or undue sympathy for the figure kneeling in the storm. Her professionalism and sense of propriety were, at that moment, like a warm, solid barrier, completely sealing off the wind and bitter rain on the other side of the door. My gaze rested on her face. In the soft light of the garage, she looked up at me slightly. Her eyes were clear and bright, her pupils reflecting my own weary figure and the fine, warm points of light from the overhead fixtures. That light was clean, pure, carrying an honesty and vibrant life force that had not been worn down by the world. It was like what? The coming dawn. It was so much like a long-forgotten afternoon, buried in the dust of time. Back then, I was fresh out of college, starting from scratch, fighting through the night in front of a simple computer screen in a tiny rented apartment. Vivian used to look at me with those same shining eyes, filled with unconditional trust and adoration, as if I held the power to create entire worlds. A corner of my heart that had long been frozen over seemed to be touched, ever so slightly, by this familiar light. A faint, long-lost warmth quietly seeped into the barren wasteland that had been encased in the ice of betrayal and calculation. It was faint, but it was real. Yes, I broke my gaze, looking down at the file in my hands. My fingertips paused on the cold plastic sleeve. Vance is finally bankrupt. The statement was both a declaration of fact and a final postscript to the bloodbath of the last 3 months. Yes, Mr. Shaw. Claire's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of finality. Vance is bankrupt. She paused, a new lightness and forward-looking tone in her voice. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, everything will be a new beginning. I looked up at her again. She was still standing there, her back straight, her eyes bright and firm, like a young tree that stands taller and greener after a storm. The warm light of the garage enveloped her, and it silently began to dispel the lingering chill that clung to me. Outside the door was the destructive storm and the wreckage of the past. Inside, the light was warm, and a document representing both an end and a new beginning was in my hands. And before me were those shining eyes, filled with the light of a brand new dawn.